Mercedes' miserable start to the 2024 F1 season continued, with Lewis Hamilton stating that this is his worst start of a season I've ever had. And while Ferrari are celebrating the success of a 1-2 finish down under in Australia thanks to their smooth operator Carlos Sainz, Mercedes on the other hand left Albert Park with a double DNF. If it rains, it pours, as the saying goes. And having had a look throughout Hamilton's opening 3 rounds of the season, he is in fact totally right in his assessment of it being his worst on record. And when asked if it was worse than both 2022 and 23, he replied, "Oh yeah, for sure, and it's worse than 2009, I think." For those of you not around or not tuning in back in 2009, this was the year in which only 3 teams started with a double diffuser that season. So much so, in fact, that when the Brawn GP team, which won the Drivers' Championship with Jenson Button, turned up to the second pre-season test, they went over 2 seconds quicker than any other team had managed across the opening test. And this, of course, all stems from one certain issue that the Mercedes team have, and it's finally being confirmed by TOTO WOLFF that it's a correlation issue that they have had over the last 3 seasons, where the data they receive from Brackley and Brixworth in the sim sessions when they're setting up the cars for the brand new season and through each race in those seasons, it's just not adding up when they actually come on track, and they're missing this one particular piece of data from real life back into the sim, and they cannot put it in. And this is what TOTO WOLFF had to say on this very subject. But fundamentally, whatever we see in the tunnel doesn't correlate with what's happening on the track. It is not a single person that says, I would interpret that data in this way, and because of dogmatism, we're not making any progress. I don't see dogmatism. I see an open environment where people share, where people take themselves by the nose and say, maybe in my area we are making mistakes. Sometimes it takes time, because back in my Williams days, I knew what was missing. But here, I don't think we are missing something. It is just a complication of what's happening with the car that we can't see. It's like an on-off switch. And this follows the weekend's Grand Prix in Australia, where Hamilton retired with a power unit failure before George Russell decided to crash his car all on his own in one of those corners. And essentially, this is the problem that the team have. They just cannot find what this issue is on the car in the real world, that sometimes is there and sometimes it's not there, because as we've seen in practice sessions, they look there or thereabouts. And as we know, the team is not stupid. They will run certain levels of fuel, certain engine mode levels, and they will have them all turned down and turned up respectively at different moments throughout practice sessions. And they're seeing that they're competitive when they start on a Friday. And it's not just a case of all the other teams make progress throughout a weekend, because of course that they do that. But the biggest problem is Mercedes isn't seeing improvement when they lower the fuel out of the car, when they increase engine modes. It seems the more the track grips up, the less competitive they become. They cannot take this step forward that the teams around them can. And this isn't something they've ever encountered before. And I think this is the biggest problem that they have. And, he states that it's brutally painful. And I can understand why that would be the case. All the data suggests they should have a car much quicker than what they're being able to deliver on track and to showcase to the Formula One paddock and world. And they cannot bring out the maximum performance of the W15 because of a particular issue that they don't understand. And it's something Hamilton has had to deal with alongside Russell for the last 3 seasons. So Hamilton has plenty of experience of difficult starts to a year. And so I think that this isn't a case of not only in terms of points, but it's even more worrying when you actually talk about the competitiveness of this car currently. And even on top of that, his actual comfort behind the W15 cockpit is definitely not there. You can quite clearly see from both onboards, trackside, and through the data, he's really struggling with this current car, and in particular through the high-speed corners, which in itself has actually never been one of Hamilton's strong points. And in fact, it's most likely the only area in which he's always struggled when you compare him to his teammates. And over the last 3 seasons, this is an area in which it always comes to the forefront whenever he has a difficult car to drive. And of course, this stems from the fact that the Mercedes team have a lack of ability when it comes to delivering for both of its drivers a competitive car in this ground effect era. Let's look at 2 examples of teams which last year were very much carbon copies of each other, but have gone in totally different directions and trajectories for this 24 season. The 2 teams we're talking about, of course, is Mercedes and Ferrari, who were very much in the same predicament last season, with both starting it with the wrong concept, having stuck to their guns for the 2nd year in a row, believing that they would make the necessary gains over the winter period to launch a title fight against Red Bull. But that's where the similarities have now ended, with both teams going their separate ways during the 2023 winter period. One decided that they needed to cut their losses with their unique concept and follow the trend-setting path laid out by Red Bull of the downwash side pods. And they've now bared the fruits of their labour that they put in during the off-season, while the other, having also thrown their unique concept into the trash pile, haven't followed in the same direct manner in which Ferrari have, with following Red Bull's lead. And look at where they are now. While the first year you could definitely say was a case of arrogance, believing they could get the zero pods concept to work for them, this year that's certainly not a case with this team. But before we go any further, if you've enjoyed the content within this video, please consider subscribing, as I would greatly appreciate it, as I'm looking to grow this channel and I have a lot more content that I want to produce. And I may even be going to the Japanese Grand Prix later on in April, so I could have some really interesting content to bring you all. Right, back to the video. I believe it's just a fundamental lack of basic understanding of how this particular set of rules has a bearing on how the floor interaction with the ground and of course with the bouncing through certain speed variances in high speed corners is affecting the floor and how they seal it. And I just think it's that basic lack of understanding and not being able to actually create what's happening in the real world into their simulation tools, which is a big problem for the team, because if they cannot do that, they can never understand why it's happening and how best to counteract that. And then that, of course, has the knock-on effect of having to push back any updates that they would want to bring to the car, because they just don't know how the car is going to react to those updates. It could make matters better, or adversely, it could make it a lot worse. And I think this is their major problem that they've had. They can see an issue when it comes to high-speed corners where they're supposed to be getting a particular amount of load and downforce through a corner, but it just not translates to the real world. Whereas in every other kind of low speed, medium speed corner, they don't actually have this phenomenon. And this is the problem that they have. They, for the most part, like 75% their simulation tools are coming true on track. It's just this high-speed corner issue which has plagued them for 3 years, and they just cannot get on top of it for whatever reason it is. I would love to see if you say gave Red Bull the W15 how they would go about upgrading it, understanding it, whether they could actually figure it out, you know, their engineers and all the clever people they have down there, because I don't think it's the case of Mercedes having a lack of knowledge. If that's the case, they would never have been able to create the cars that they have. It's just, for whatever reason, they don't have the right knowledge, essentially. And I think this is a testament to the kind of work Aston Martin and Ferrari have done. They've taken people, senior people, from the likes of Red Bull and brought them into the fold with their teams, and look at where they are now. Yes, the Aston Martin team aren't competitive to the level they would want right now, but they have someone there in Dan Fellows who has a complete understanding of the current generation of cars. And the same for Ferrari. I just feel like Mercedes probably needed to do a little bit more looking outside of their own home and kind of do like a bit of a transfer from another team like Red Bull, but they never managed to do that. And that's the thing. And that's the thing, right? If you keep on going back to the drawing board with the same people that have the same knowledge and understanding, and they keep throwing the same ideas at you, how are you ever going to improve as a team? And I think that's one of the smart things Ferrari and Aston Martin have done. They've gone and taken people from other teams that have had different discussions, different ideas and knowledge passed on through all their other colleagues. And then they've brought it into that team and they can integrate it with the knowledge they had. That's something Mercedes, to the best of my knowledge, haven't actually done. And it's where their biggest problem lies within this particular set of F1 rules. It's the same people over and over again trying to decipher and understand and calculate and learn what's going on with their car. And they've got no new ideas and knowledge coming to the table. But anyway, if they don't understand that, they're never going to get any better in this particular phase of F1. And I just don't see them getting any better, to be quite frank. But right, guys, thank you all for watching. I hope you've enjoyed the video. If you have, leave a like, subscribe if you're new, and I will catch you all in another F1 video.